We're finally going to get a break from all of the mercurial and Martian energy that has been infusing us with new ideas and driving us to get things done in the scorpionic area of our life. Mercury entered Scorpio a few days ago and has been uncovering the underworld of ourselves. Wherever Scorpio sits in our chart, has been bringing up messages and information that might be uncomfortable, tinged with darkness, or has an opportunity to be transformed into some sort of power in our life. And in that same directive, Mars has been swimming in its domicile of Scorpio now for at least a week now, and has been drifting and showing up in a way that's motivating us to, again, get things done and make and commit to those transformations that are required in the scorpionic area of our life. And now the cosmological narrative for October the 9th suggests we are finally getting a break, but in lieu of Mars and Mercury, we have two stories that are coming back around that we have been battling and dealing with, integrating, learning lessons with for several months now, if not going on several years now, these dynamics, in the greater picture of things. But the dynamics that I'm going to speak of are the storylines that Jupiter in Cancer has been bringing up and Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And obviously these storylines extend far beyond when Jupiter entered the exalted waters of Cancer and far beyond when Saturn retrograded this into Pisces this recent time. This is the cosmological narrative for October the 9th. Now, before we get into it, I'm Michael the Hierophant. I'm a mystic and magi, and I have two quick promotions to talk to you about. If you want to skip these, hold the 2 times speed to skip this and get ahead to this cosmological narrative. But if this is the first time with you watching one of my videos, I encourage you to stick around because my first promotion is absolutely free. I am promoting my weekly astrological and divination spiritual workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. We get together every single Wednesday, rain or shine, at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. We hold it on Zoom, where you can go to the link tree in my bio to sign up for your limited spot in the class, and it's a first come, first served basis, limited to 10 spots per week. So it's a very intimate, very limited affair. We get together on Zoom and we review the prior week's transits, the energies, how they showed up in our lives, the mundane manifestations, because in my opinion, that is one of the best and easy ways to tackle astrology when you're first getting into it. Tackle the mundane manifestations of astrology so that you can apply the principles of how you see these energies showing up in your life in a greater reading or a greater understanding and comprehension for the collective. We also go through the following week's transits, and I help you how to delineate where these transits are taking place in your spiritual journey so that you can integrate the lessons that the Creator and the gods are putting in your life for a very specific reason, for you to gain and extrapolate a very specific message. And I'm going to help teach you how to take and extrapolate those messages from the astrology that's happening and integrating it into your own life. As we adventure through this dark forest that we call life, even if we've been incarnate before, even if we've done past life regressions and we remember being alive on this earth before, it's very hard to adventure through this dark forest. It's very hard to adventure through that dark forest, even if you have familiar footprints that you know are yours. And so what better way to get to our fixed destination where we want to get in this life? What better map, what better compass than the stars above, which are always a reflection of our internal landscape, both for the better and the worse. So please, I encourage you to join me every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific for Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. And once again, it is a limited seat affair, so it is limited to 10 seats per week. If you are beyond that 10, you'll have to come next week. The second quick promotion I have is that I've gotten a lot of messages, comments over the last months asking if I do astrological readings and do other types of services. And the answer is yes. I put together a menu. You can find it on TikTok or Instagram. You can DM me on either of those applications, or you can send me an email directly to my personal email through the link tree in my bio. I have situational and hardship financing available. So if you cannot afford my normal rates, I just ask that you be honest, let me know what your situation is. We will work something out and we will coordinate. So let's dive into the cosmological narrative for October the 9th. We have two major aspects we're going to focus on. And again, they're not lighting us up. We're not going to necessarily have life-changing consequential moments. This is just a reiteration of the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic that we have been battling for months, if not years at this point, and we will continue to battle for months and years. So to refresh you, the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic generally in astrology, and this isn't specific to this transit, but this is the storyline we're returning to. Jupiter wants to expand. Jupiter rules cosmic law, and in the sense that Jupiter rules what's fair in the cosmos, and this is where there is commonality between Saturn, because Saturn is the god and lord of karma. So sometimes Saturn will show up in our lives and rebalance the scales, make things karmically fair in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense to us. But how can we know what kind of karma we've gained from past lives, both negative or positive, and what kind of karma we still have to integrate and work through in this life that we signed up for prior to this life? So sometimes Saturn's way of fairness doesn't actually look very fair to us. It actually looks very unfair. And in that same way, Jupiter kind of works in a similar fashion, allowing us to then gravitate and expand on the good fortune, the good karma in our life. But what are Saturn and Jupiter at their core? Saturn constricts, Jupiter expands. And so naturally, as energy polar opposites, like Jupiter and Neptune will often get paired together symbolically and archetypally. In modern astrology, we know them to be two different archetypal presentations. If you're working with mythopoetic or mythology-based astrology, then you definitely know Poseidon and Zeus to be very different entities. They're brothers, so they're very similar mythologically, and they carry a lot of the same traits, which is probably why ancient and Chaldean astrologers associated a lot of Neptune's qualities with Jupiter. But we have this dichotomy between Jupiter and Saturn, which is, again, expanding something in our life and restricting another part. And so a lot of times this will manifest as restrictions in our maturity and our accountability, the things that are forcing discipline in our life, institutions, governments, parents, social structures. And Jupiter is asking us to break free of those restraints that Saturn puts on us. And it creates this dichotomy where we continually are pulled back into compression and then expand past that compression, pulled into compression and expanded back through compression. And this allows us to grow our consciousness evolution. We see where the structures of our life are, and then we break them apart. We grow more, we see where more structures in our life are, we break them apart, and we grow through it. So we've kind of reviewed and spent quite a bit of time in this video now talking about the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic, and I think it's important because we haven't really talked about it astrologically speaking in my series of videos for a while now, and I think it's important that we kind of bring that back into focus, especially as Neptune is finishing up its retrogradation in Aries and is going to join Saturn in its domicile of Pisces, which will then add a new flair to it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the first aspect we're going to go through, and we're going to be relatively hasty about this today because we're already up to 7.5 minutes, is we have another minor grand trine. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, we had a minor grand trine between Jupiter, Lilith, and Venus in Virgo. Now, this minor grand trine on October 9th is actually going to be slightly tipped, and we're going to have Venus in Virgo on one end, we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer at the tip of the minor grand trine, and we are actually going to have the moon in its exaltation in Taurus in the superior position. So what does that minor grand trine look like for us? Well, that minor grand trine looks like the moon exalted in Taurus is actually in opposition, in a trine with Venus in Virgo, which means that there is a harmonious expansion in the nature of Jupiter. And a minor grand trine will be about Jupiter's story. So Jupiter in Cancer has been showing us, giving us knowledge and wisdom through experience gained, how to nurture and mother ourselves in the Cancerian era of our chart, because we clearly need a lot of work because that's what Jupiter is focusing on right now. So whenever we get these trines, these minor grand trines, even these grand trines, just as a whole, a grand trine, these are all for the benefit of Jupiter's story in our lives, which is teaching us how to nurture and care for ourselves. And so we have this harmonious collectivization of energy between Venus and Virgo, which has been refining, because Virgo is about purity and refinement. So we've had a refinement of our desires that's flowing harmoniously with where our emotional body feels safe. The moon is exalted in Taurus because what does our emotional body want? Our emotional body wants stability, security, and to feel good. And those are all Taurian qualities as a Venus-ruled sign. So the moon does really good in Taurus, and it is in the superior position, which means that both Jupiter and Venus in Virgo are working for the benefit of the moon. However, let's remember that Jupiter is in the domicile of the moon, and Jupiter is also exalted in Cancer, so arguably, even though Jupiter is not in the superior position, this ultimately probably all has to do with Jupiter giving us another experience manifest in our lives that aligns our sense of care for self with our Venetian aesthetic values that have been being refined in the Virgoan section of our chart. and we're feeling emotionally pretty good about it. This is a good day to feel good because Moon is in Taurus, Moon's exalted. It's probably the best position for us to have a good day, regardless of your chart. Now, the second aspect we're going to talk about also involves the Moon and Jupiter, but instead of a minor grand trine, we have an easy opposition aspect. An easy opposition aspect is defined as one opposition between planets, and then we have a sextile and then a trine. And it's basically like a lopsided, like let's go back to geography class. It's like a lopsided triangle. So at the top of this easy opposition, we have Lilith and Scorpio, which Lilith has been asking us in the Scorpionic area of our chart, where do we have redirected energy? Whether it's an escapism, an addiction, whatever it is that we react to transformative plutonic tower moments in our life and kind of hide away in our own personal closet we've created for ourselves. And for everyone that's different. Some people it's alcohol, some people it's cannabis, some people it's procrastinating, other people it's video games, sports, food, whatever. Those are all escapisms, all forms of addiction. And Lilith says, hey, I'm not asking you to rectify that addiction. I'm not asking for you to completely eliminate it. I'm asking for you to recognize how that addiction and how that escapism, how that thing that we're doing is actually a raw primal power that we can grab a hold of and redirect into another area of our life. Now, the opposition with the Moon in the superior position, exalted in Taurus, suggests an external situation brought about by Saturn, because oppositions are of the nature of Saturn. So this opposition that Lilith and Scorpio and the Moon in Taurus is presenting to us actually has to do with something Saturn is actually bringing into our lives. And this will be important because we're going to talk about a third aspect that is we're going to start feeling it today, and it's going to perfect over the next few days. But hold horses, let's finish talking about this easy opposition aspect first. So the easy opposition aspect suggests that Lilith is bringing something into our awareness, a transformative opportunity, but it's in direct opposition with the Moon in Taurus. So where we're feeling emotionally stable, there is some change that we need to take some sort of escapism and addiction and redirect it. Now, an easy opposition is nice because it's an easy opposition. Whereas an opposition would normally require a 50-50 middle ground, that third planet that connects with the easy opposition is actually an expression point. And in this situation, it's Jupiter exalted in Cancer. So this is a great expression point because this suggests that there's some sort of self-care that Jupiter has already brought into our awareness, a tool of self-care, so to speak, that has already been brought into our awareness and that we can use to basically solve the equation between the Moon exalted in Taurus and Lilith in Scorpio. So the opposition between Lilith and Scorpio and the Moon is important, as well as bringing back the entire narrative story between Jupiter and Saturn, because that opposition between Lilith and Scorpio and the Moon is of the nature of Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And Saturn retrograde in Pisces has been asking us to make form out of the formless. And so this is really fascinating to me because this all comes on the heels of Venus and Virgo beginning to form into a perfect opposition with Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And we're not going to talk about it too much in this video, but just to summarize, Venus and Virgo in its fall opposite Saturn in Pisces retrograde suggests that we're getting a reality check with where Saturn has been asking us to bring form into our life. And particularly, this form that Saturn is asking us to bring into our life is probably going to have to do with money, something with finances, as I mentioned, relationships with women if you're a man, relationships with women if you're a woman. But obviously, like romantic relationships if you're a man in a relationship with a woman, relationships with your mother, your sister, your best friend who's a woman. Anything that's aesthetic, sensual, pleasurable, believe it or not, even taking a bath, like where you sit there with Epsom salts and you're genuinely enjoying the moment of being there, it's not like just on your to-do list, that is a Venetian quality. So Venus and Saturn are giving us some sort of reality check that is creating an external situation where we have to come to terms with something Saturn has been bringing up. Now, some of this could be internal because, again, Saturn's in retrograde. So Saturn's motivation and the way that he is manifesting in our lives, it's all up here. It's all mental because retrogrades manifest mentally. It doesn't mean that it's not something that might manifest in your life physically, but it's only going to manifest in your life physically because it's something that's going on up here, a feeling, a thought, a reflection, something of the sort. So we are, for some reason, going to be stimulated in an environmental situation to recognize where our desire body is coming into a reality check with where we need to form the formless. Obviously, what that suggests is that Venus is saying, hey, there's this desire, there's this desire that you have, that you're chasing, that you've acquired, that you've refined as Venus has moved through Virgo. And now Saturn is saying, hey, if you actually want that desire, if you actually want to see that show up in your life for real, you're going to have to make form out of the formless, which is Pisces. Now, we're going to continue on talking about this Venus opposition with Saturn this week. However, I think that for now, on Thursday the 9th, look for a day where we get the expansion versus compression. And there's going to be, like I said, this easy opposition aspect as well as the minor grand trine, which both favor a lot of Jupiterian and Cancer qualities. So the 9th is going to be a day to self-care and remember what Jupiter has been teaching you as it's been swimming exalted in Cancer about how to self-care for yourself. If you enjoyed these astrological and spiritual narratives, I encourage you to join and check out Consciousness Conjunctions and Conversations, my weekly workshop. If I don't see you signed up for class, I'll see you in my DMs for a reading. And if I don't see you in my DMs for a reading, I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday.